I met Terry because I was working on a commercial in Italy, and for some reason, it was with Centre Burger, who was quite a big star in those days, and it was for Lux soap, and directed by Terry Bedford. And for some reason, Julian Doyle was making a documentary for Lux, I suppose, about the making of this commercial. And the commercial was all over the place because we started off in Sorrento in a beautiful hotel, and it was all going to be shot in this beautiful hotel. And then, I don't know, Centre Burger couldn't get there, so we had to cross Italy to somewhere called Vieste and I was building sets out of nothing. I had nothing, and suddenly I had to build these sets for this commercial. And Julian was making a documentary and was rather impressed at my ability to make things out of nothing, and thought that I would be a good person for Terry to meet. So he introduced me to Terry, who was crewing up at that time for Jabberwocky. And I went to have an interview with Terry. And Terry's studio then, you went up either a ladder or a spiral staircase, that bit I can't remember, but onto a mezzanine where his desk was. And so I was quite nervous at meeting the great man. And coupled with the fact that there was no barrier on the mezzanine at all. So my legs were shaking with vertigo, because I suffer terribly from vertigo. Anyway, that's how I met Terry. And I worked on Jabberwocky. And after Jabberwocky, Terry offered me Time Bandits, which was a great thrill. It's a designer's dream, Time Bandits. It's all those different periods, fantasy, ancient Greece, medieval, Napoleonic, and Terry, what more could you want? In a way, you have to interpret and make his ideas come to life or work and build the sets and make them how he wants them. But he isn't actually working out exactly how the set would be, but he'd have very strong ideas of how it should look. And that's very stimulating. And I think he's one of those people who brings out the best in you because he's so excited himself. His enthusiasm is infectious. One of the sets that we didn't have very much money for was the Titanic. And if you look at the Titanic, it's all absolutely flat on. All we built is a deck, and there's a bit of stock footage. And it was built on some sort of rig so it could tip up when it hit the iceberg. But it works. That's the magic of film, that you don't actually have to, you can say what you're saying with very little, but you need a director like Terry to be able to do that, because he would know that how he was going to shoot it. And so you only had to build exactly what he wanted. So you could, for the shot, so you could actually be very economical. I've worked with lots of directors who want full sets, with every wall, ceilings, everything out of the windows, and then they walk onto the set and decide how to shoot it. But Terry would do it before, and he would do lots and lots of storyboards, so you'd know what you're going to look at. The wonderful location was Morocco, and we went on a recce to look at Morocco. That's probably the best bit of the film, because you're not quite so stressed then, and a small group of us went. Terry, the prop buyer, Karen Brooks, and Patrick, who was the location manager, and Peter Bijou, the cameraman. And it was fabulous. I've got pictures here that it was completely unspoilt. Nobody went there, and it was just wonderful. And so with these, Terry took these fantastic photographs, and then we marked on them what we had to do to each one. And we also went to see what we could get there in the way of props and things like that. And I found a little note in here saying, on the road to so-and-so, there's some baskets, Millie. And we went into the souk looking for props, and we were very pestered, because that's what happens in souks, and there were these carpet sellers, and they were trying to persuade Terry to buy some carpets, and bringing the price down, and Terry kept saying, too cheap, I want to spend more, They were so confused. More expensive, please. And they were very confused. But it was quite a hard location to shoot because of the heat, because of very little time. The scene with the Minotaur, with Sean Connery and the Minotaur, the only way to get up to that location was on foot, when all the equipment went on donkeys and mules. And it was quite a heavy walk up. And I remember that we had a portaloo in a cave and a curtain across it, with one of the locals was posted as the guard, so you could go to the loo without, obviously you can't lock a curtain, but all the girls complained that the guard used to look over the top, as soon as you went in, would look over the top of the curtain. So it's sort of glamour filmmaking. Raglan Castle, well, that was all quite spectacular with the special effects and the fire, and I built that theatre, which I loved doing. That was such a nice set to do. Really, really lovely. I really enjoyed doing that. It had the mechanical waves that didn't work very well and the backdrop, and yeah, it was lovely. The thing is, I don't know if some people think that you design a film and then you make it. Of course you don't. You're doing it it's an organic process. And you're always trying to run one step ahead. So you've designed something, they're shooting that, and you're getting the next bit ready, and so it goes on. And as I remember it, the furniture for Kevin's family house arrived with this plastic covering to protect it in transit. And it was then that we put it in the set, and Terry thought, oh, this is wonderful, having plastic on there. And we had this conversation about how they might well have kept their furniture covered with plastic, but then went on further into the scene. And if there was anything I'd like to change, I would like to have done Kevin's bedroom at the end. I think it was one of the first things we shot. It was the first studio set after Morocco that we shot. And in a way, things evolved, and Kevin's bedroom is like the starting point of all the fantasies, and you could have put much more into it if you'd known exactly how each of the other sets were going to turn out in the end, if you know what I mean. Well, we did have Lego. There was Lego on the floor. There's a little theatre set. There were pictures of knights. You know, I tried to put into it all the things that were going to happen later, but because things changed how they happened later, I think one could have done it better if you'd done it if you'd done the reverse. You'd done all the other things and then put the little references to it in his bedroom. Well, they were built in perspective, but that was all Terry's idea. It's so clever. And that again was done very, very economically, because it's just black. And the cages were built so that they were different sizes, so that you got the idea that they were much further away than they were. Agamemnon's palace was mostly based on Knossos, Minoan sort of temple, and mixed in with Morocco, so that it got that feeling of the patterns on the buildings in Morocco then were on the interior that we built in the studio, so that it tied up, which I think it does very well, actually. I love doing that. I really enjoyed that set. And Napoleonic, well, I think that works brilliantly as well. I think one of my favourite scenes is the banqueting hall with the ox being broken over, and I love the set, and I loved Jim's costumes for the dwarves when they're on the horses and it comes apart. I just think it works, and the acting, everything about that set, that scene, I think is lovely. I really like it. That we were going to have a future world. There was the Spider-Woman's cave, which actually I think I even started to make, but then we decided not to have. We had a polystyrene sculptor, and he built this amazing cave, and then we never shot it. Don't think we shot. Maybe we shot a bit, but it was never used. There was a forest of hands. There were all sorts of things at the beginning, because that's what happens with a film. You've got all these ideas, and then things change as you go along, so you have to adjust and adapt. And probably we didn't need quite so many worlds as originally written. I'm not at all critical, really. I just think it's great. I think it's absolutely great, and I watched it the other day prior to this interview, and I think it holds up remarkably well. And when you think we did that without any of this modern technology, it's completely extraordinary. And I think sometimes all those restrictions of not having very much money and not having very much time make everyone much more creative, and you get something much stronger in the end.